All right, good afternoon. Welcome to Strategy Stream for today. I guess it's November 25th. A little bit hard to believe. It's 2020, day before Thanksgiving, and I'm glad you're here. We're going to proceed with what we've been doing here on Wednesdays for the last few weeks, and we're working through strategic ways to move forward with your business in 2020 and into 2021 and beyond. So I cannot begin to take the time it would take to do an effective recap of what we've covered so far, but I do feel the need to just let you know from the beginning here of today's session that we are going to plow forward. We're going to talk about website visibility today, and this is a topic that just applies universally to almost every business that I've encountered in the last 22 years of being in the business of helping businesses grow. Of course, 22 years ago, websites were a lot less common for especially smaller businesses. But over that time, they have become essential, and we covered it previously on one of our last sessions. In fact, it might have even been the very last session where we talked about the fact that there really is no situation I can imagine right now where a business operating in today's world should not have a website. You need a website. It needs to be something you own and control, and it needs to be a platform that you have the ability to update and edit and change and publish new content on. And we talked about the reasons that that is true on our last session. And we started to get into the mechanics of what it looks like to have your business become more visible on the internet, so that when people who are looking for solutions to the problems that they face that you can help them address, when they look for those solutions, they find you. So they find your business. How does that work? What is the what are the tried and true methods that you can use that will help your business get there? And of course, the big picture reason that we're doing all of this is because so many businesses are in dire need of strategy. When we have limited resources, whether it's time or money, we can't do all the things. We have to be strategic. We have to make decisions about what it takes for us to be effective and how we stand the best chance, really, of accomplishing our business goals moving forward. And none of us can afford to waste enormous quantities of time or money on things that are not going to be effective. But of course, how can you make those decisions ahead of time? Well, if you have a solid strategy, you can make those decisions. And that's why we're doing this. It's a strategic process that we've walked many, many businesses through in a more condensed form, thousands of businesses. In a more elaborate form, hundreds of businesses, where we've even taken a couple of days and done one-on-one consulting with many of these businesses just to develop a strategic foundation for their business moving forward. So again, I can't possibly recap all the things. So if you've missed some strategy stream sessions, please check them out. What I would like to do for today, though, is pick up with a brief recap just to kind of set the context of where we are for today. And I won't do anywhere near as much as I did last week. Last week was a little bit of a longer recap. So, hey, if you have missed some of this, then that might be a fun place for you to start. Is just what we did last week, because it will give you a way to get up to speed, which isn't fair. You really need to watch all of the previous sessions in order to get up to speed. But hey, we all need web visibility. So what I'm going to do right now is bring up a visual that I think will help. And let's kind of do a quick recap here. So what we have on screen right now is how a customer, in very, very simple terms, how a future customer of yours perhaps, might come to do business with you. It starts with some kind of awareness, and that's in the blue cloud up at the top. And then we have this sort of kind of funnel-shaped thing. The marketing funnel is a little overdone, but I think just for the sake of giving you a way to think about it, they're going to develop interest, and you see it's wider, like more people develop interest, then move to the next phase, right? Then they're going to learn about your business. Then they're going to evaluate and maybe justify whatever decisions they're making. And then the green box at the bottom is when they make a purchase, right? So as a business in 2020, what can you do to encourage that the right people who are best suited for your business end up in the red, orange, yellow, and then green zones of this process, right? So, well, let's talk specifically about what that looks like, right? So, and we covered this in detail previously. So on the right-hand side, so on the left of your screen, you see the exact same stuff we were just looking at. On the right-hand side are the verbs that we can engage in as business people to encourage those activities. And I put the blue brand verb, like branding your business, if you will. To brand your business is essentially to create awareness or to reinforce awareness. And a lot of times this is something big businesses can do, but as small businesses where we need to get a huge return on every dollar that we invest in marketing, this can't be a place that we spend a lot of time. It just isn't, or money, right? If we can do it, if we can brand our business and tell our brand story while doing other things, yes, that's fantastic. But as an exercise unto itself, it's often not a great place for small businesses to invest. So we need to be in that red zone where we're attracting people, and then we want to engage those people, nurture the relationships that we've built through engagement, and then close business, right? So we're in the red zone right now. So again, just for quick context, we are in the red zone. This is all about attracting people to your business so that they develop interest and then move to the next phase. And often we measure, and that's what's inside that red box on the right, how do we measure visibility? Well, we measure it through search and several types of search. We talked about voice search. We talked about mobile search, local search. And we also measure our effectiveness at attracting people in terms of social reach. Maybe you have a Facebook page, an Instagram account, Twitter, whatever it might be, and you can measure your effectiveness, your ability to be, to get results ultimately. At the attract stage anyway, we measure that by thinking about how many people did we reach with our posts, and then ultimately web traffic, right? So web traffic is sort of the key metric that we need to think about, because in this model of attracting people to your business, this is sort of an industry term that we use for this, is what we call inbound marketing, right? You're creating a massive magnet, and your massive magnet is intended to pull the right people into your business and cause them to seek you out and do business with you, right? Who wouldn't love to have a steady stream of new prospects, leads, contacts, clients, customers showing up on a regular basis, right? That's what this is intended to create for you. It is a little bit of a long-term play. If you don't have these pieces in place, then it'll take a little bit of time. But you can be effective starting today. So let's talk about what that looks like, right? That's where we are. We're in the attract phase, and we're going to talk about web visibility as our primary metric for and primary aim right now for where we are in this zone of strategy stream. This is all about web visibility. And like I said, even if you've got a well-established website, a very effective marketing set of processes in your business, you can benefit from what we're going to walk through today as we talk about web visibility. All right, so let's talk about your website. We covered in some detail last week the plague that many of us as business owners, as marketers, as website owners, we sort of suffer from a malady. And that is, it's not our fault, but we think like the people who provide the solution. And that makes it very difficult for us to think like the person who needs the solution, right? Your future customer has a problem, or they will have a problem, and they're going to go to a search engine in some form or fashion, whether it's on their computer screen, typing at a laptop or a desktop or an iPad. Maybe they're going to open their mobile phone and search, or they're going to talk to their phone. They're going to talk to Siri. They're going to talk to the Google Assistant. Maybe they're going to talk to Alexa sitting in their house or their Google Home device or whatever. They're going to run a voice search. They're going to run some kind of search in many, many of those situations. So how can you be sure that your business is where they end up when they run that search? Well, to begin with, we have to think like a searcher and not like the person providing the solution. We talked about this in detail last week, so if you missed that, please check out the strategy stream from last week, because I can't cover it again. We've got to move forward from it. So I want you to I'm going to work under the assumption that you're thinking in terms of the problems people are trying to solve. Okay. You're not thinking about the solutions you provide yet. Okay. And like I said previously, that's really hard to do as business people, as marketers. We tend to think in terms of the solutions that we provide. Now, we covered this in a great amount of detail. We also talked about mobile search and why it's so important. So let's ask the sort of $1 million question. How do you win the search game? How do you make sure that your website shows up at the top of search? And I covered, we discussed a little bit last time about Google versus the other search engines. Believe it or not, there are other search engines. Most of us as marketers tend to think and act as though there are no other search engines. And the reason for that is that if you want to be effective at getting customers, you can start with the assumption that you need to win the Google search game. And if you do the things that will win you the Google search game, oftentimes those things will also win you the game on the other search engine platforms. It's not 100% the case, but certainly at the foundational level, it is absolutely the case. Okay, so let's talk about getting new business from search engines. Okay, and I'm going to bring up another visual for us here because I've got some facts and figures that I really want you to see. So let's take a look at these. All right. So if we're talking about getting new business from search engines, we are talking about Google. Google has, and I should update this number, but it's only gone up, right? 88.65% of the market share for search as of just about a year ago. Okay, so call it near 90. Call it enough that if you get those people, you're winning. Okay, so this is why, right? It's very simple logic. Google, as we've said, if you engage in strategies that produce results with Google, they often work on the other search engines, right? If we think about Google's stated goal, and this is so critical because we have to realize that whatever you think about Google, maybe you think they're evil. Maybe you think they have privacy concerns around their business practices. Maybe you think that their only business is advertising. You're not wrong about any of those things. But because of the nature of the beast right now, when people run searches, almost 90% of them are going to be doing so on Google. So we have to think about at least aligning our strategies to some degree with Google's stated goal. Okay, so here's Google's stated goal, especially for their search business, their search product. Okay, it's bigger than that because it's in some way it's company wide. But from the very beginning of Google, you can find in 1998, I think it is, the two founders of Google explaining their idea at Stanford, and they said, "Our mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful." So my question for you today is, if you had a partner that you were going to work with and they said, "Hey, my goal is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful," how would you go about partnering with that entity? Okay? How would you, in other words, let's say that you wanted Google to show your business to searchers, which you do. How can you assist Google in their goal, if their goal is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful? Gone are the days when we could, do some keyword stuff and put some fancy code tricks under the behind the scenes in the code of our website or whatever and trick Google into showing our content. Okay? Those days have been gone for a very, very, very long time. Okay? So instead, we have to think about supplying information to Google's users. Google's users are your future customers. Okay? So, I can't state this enough. We have to engage in doing the things that will cause Google's mission to be successful as it relates to the information that the people you're trying to serve in your business are looking for. we have to align ourselves with Google's mission here. It's just what we have to do. And so let's talk about how that ends up looking for us. Okay, so getting the right traffic from Google, again, remembering they want to make the information accessible and useful. So Google has one job. You have one job. Google's one job when people are running a search. And in this case, I'm talking about maybe a taxi or limousine service, right? Google's one job is to connect the person running the search with the most relevant and useful information. That means Google has these bots which run out and they scour the web, they crawl every website they find, and including yours. If you've done your work correctly, we'll talk about tactical elements of this in just a little bit here. We will get to that today, I promise. Those bots run out and they crawl over the web and they find a bunch of websites. Google is, at the end of the day, a text machine. They're going to try to read all the text that you can put out. Google's job is to be a matchmaker. The person running the search wants a certain type of information. Our job is to be the provider of that information and to feed it to Google in a way that causes Google to like what they find. And more importantly, to deliver a good experience to the person running the search. Okay, so we've got to be good at this. So what does that look like? There are more than 100 factors that Google uses to evaluate which website to show for any given search. So somebody runs a search for the kind of products or services you provide, or more importantly, the benefits that they gain, the problem they're trying to solve that your products and services can help them solve, right? They're going to run that kind of search. Google uses this complex, incredibly advanced algorithm to analyze more than 100 factors. We know a lot of them. We don't know all of them. There's some secret sauce, okay? But we know enough of them, and because we know Google's mission, we can align ourselves with a lot of those things without having to know the technical details. I'm not here to teach you all 100 factors that we know. We don't even know probably all 100, but I'm not here to teach you the technical details of this. Instead, I can give you a trajectory that you can follow. This trajectory will help you, by accident, get more traffic than your competitors get by paying SEO firms and search engine optimization people, right? Does that sound good to you? I hope so. So mostly all of these factors come down to one thing at the end of the day. Give the searcher what they're looking for. Give them the most helpful, accessible, and useful information that Google can find, okay? They also want to ensure that user has a good experience. And this text is dropping off the bottom of the screen, but ensuring that the user has a good experience. So those two things, right? Give the searcher, in this case, the information they're looking for, the answers, the solutions, the text that matches up to the intention behind the search they're running, and then also deliver them a good experience. In other words, if your website is all about you and your business and sales and high pressure sales information, and hey, click here or cover the screen with a thing, and require that they give you their email address before the visitor can get to the information or whatever, that's a bad experience, right? Google wants that visitor to have a good experience so that they click through, stay on your website, maybe click on other pages, stick around, or that they get what they need and move on, whichever the case is. But Google's job is to give that user the best experience possible, and that means we have to provide a good experience to the user, okay? And I've said this already, this is why the gimmicks don't work. There is no substitute, and I want to say this slowly, there is no substitute for original text-based content published on a regular basis that's designed to provide useful information to the right people. There's no substitute for doing this. And it is for this reason that I have spent a lot of time over the last number of years working to help business owners understand that you have to think about yourself as being in the publishing business. It's not enough to have a website. It's not enough to fill it with content at the time that you create the website and then forget about it. You have to be in the business of publishing original text-based content on a regular basis that is intended not to be self-serving for you as the business owner, as the marketer, as the owner of the website. It has to be content that serves the needs of the user, the end user. So we think about Google as our first customer. We have to be able to provide that text in a way that Google's bots will digest it, devour it, ingest it, feed it to the algorithm, and then in turn show it to their end users. But then ultimately, the content has to serve the needs of the user, the end user. And again, this is overlapping somewhat with what we covered last week. So to move forward, there is no substitute. There's no substitute for original text-based content that is published on a regular basis on your website. And sure, share it to your Facebook page, carve it up and make images out of it and share it to Instagram or Twitter or Pinterest or wherever the social networks that your future customers are hanging out the most, right? Don't just use all of them. Use the most important ones. Facebook is often the answer to that if we're just picking one because they have such a massive market share for social media. But in all the different places you may ultimately share it, email it out. Absolutely, you should have an email list. Yes. But at the beginning of all of that is your website, which serves as the hub, the content hub for all this stuff. And it's useful stuff. You're constantly thinking about serving the needs of your user. Last week, I encouraged you to think about all the questions. Actually, I'm not even sure I got quite there. I started to tell the story of Marcus in the pool business in Virginia in the last economic crisis that we had in this country. And at night and weekends, he was cranking out new content to answer questions that people asked in the process of thinking about buying a pool, constructing a new pool. So I'm not sure that I told you to do this. So if I didn't tell you to do this last week, or if you missed last week, here's an exercise for you. And write this down because you want to do this. Trust me, you need to do this. Very few businesses have ever done this. It's not terribly hard to do, okay? It's not complex. It's simple to do. Make a list. See if you can write down 100 questions. See if you can get to 100. But the questions you're writing down are the questions that anyone has ever asked you in the process of buying your stuff. Do you sell services? Great. What do they ask about? Prospects that you've been in sales meetings, sales calls with, face-to-face interactions, phone calls, Zoom calls, doesn't matter what it is. What are the questions they're asking, right? If you don't know the answer, talk to your salespeople. If you have a retail business, talk to the people at the checkout. Talk to the people who are wandering around the aisles and stocking the shelves and doing that stuff and talking to customers. If you don't have a sales department or salespeople or whatever, there are ways to get data. We talked about that a little bit last week. But talk to your customer service staff. What are the problems people have with your product or with your service? What are the issues that don't come up until after they buy? When someone comes to you and they've purchased from a competitor of yours, what are the issues that they come to you with? What are the problems they've had with your competitor's product or service, right? Make a list of these questions. Write them all down. See if you can get to 100 of them. I mean, I really want you to take time and write as many of these down as you possibly can. Because if those people are asking you these questions, you can be assured they're asking Google or Siri or the Google Assistant these questions. And that means that if you write content on your website that answers these questions, there is a chance that Google will show your business to those searchers as the search result that's relevant for that search. And again, more than 100 factors go into how Google makes that decision, but table stakes for showing up when people run these kinds of searches. Like, forget all the fancy things that you can do to optimize. For any of those optimization tricks to work, to be fair, there are legitimate optimization methodologies that can be used. Okay, so I don't intend to blast every SEO out there. There are incredibly ethical, and conscientious search engine optimization firms that do great work. Okay. But at the end of the day, they will tell you that you have to have the content first. You can't expect your website to show up and become a relevant result for Google, the text machine, if you don't have the text. You got to have the text. Okay. So that's the deal. And this is why I say for a long time, I've encouraged people to really think about their business, not as being in the business that they're in, but to think about being in the business of publishing, because it's that critical. I talked about Marcus, and I showed this book last week, Utility. This book is by Jay Baer. Marcus Sheridan he told me the story firsthand. We published a fantastic interview with him on our podcast a few years back, the Grow the Dream Show, and he told this story. But he literally created what became the most comprehensive website about pools on the internet. Their website became that, and it became that because he did exactly what I just said. He wrote down all the questions people asked in the process, and he wrote helpful, original content and published it on his website, and Google ate that up and began to show that information to visitors. And so they were no longer a pool company with a website. They were the owners and operators of the largest pool website on the planet, and that in turn delivered them business results that allowed them to not just survive the recession, but to grow out of it into a highly successful business. It revolutionized their business, and you can do the same thing right now in your business. There is one tool you need. One tool. You have to have a website, and I'm going to recommend that your website is built on this platform. And if it's not built on this platform, that you add a section to your website that is built on this platform. Okay? So what is this platform? And why do I think of it as the absolute essential one? There's of all the marketing tools that exist in today's world, there is one that I consider to be essential. One, just one. Every business needs this tool. What is it? I consider it to be the foundation of any conversation around website best practices. And there are reasons these bullet points make sense in another context, but the tool is WordPress. You have, I'm sure, heard of WordPress by now. I don't have up to the minute stats on this. Something like 38% of the World Wide Web runs on WordPress today. WordPress is the platform that we recommend and is the only platform that we have essentially required any client of ours to have going on 10 years, more than 10 years now. Prior to that, it was a recommendation, and then it became a requirement, essentially. WordPress is easy to use, especially so I want to differentiate between building a website and designing it and launching it from using the website, right? I'm thinking of you today as a user. Your job is to create and publish content. WordPress is easy to do that with, okay? It's easy to do that with. Years ago, it was easier to launch and build a WordPress website than it is today. There are a lot more complexities involved in website development today than there used to be, but you can start simple and grow. The thing that so many businesses do, and honestly, as somebody that's advising businesses to be effective, this is so frustrating to me. So many businesses focus on the fancy bells and whistles and the widgets and the design things and all of that. And all of that is great. I'm a fan. I really am. I love great design. I enjoy great functionality. But at the end of the day, if you build all of that stuff and you don't get into the content publishing business, someone's going to beat you. Okay? You can get away with it for a little while until one of your competitors wakes up and learns what I'm teaching you today, which is that you absolutely must publish new content on a regular basis on your website, right? So if you build a fancy site that does all the great stuff, but you don't publish new content on a regular basis, you will lose at the search engine visibility game. If not now, then eventually. Probably, if you're just building a site now, you probably are you won't. It'll be now. You will never win the search engine visibility game. Okay, so another thing that we always talk about with WordPress is that it's out of the box. It's very friendly to search engines. So that means that your website will naturally feed Google the right types of stuff if your designer or you or whoever actually builds the site or controls how it looks and feels, right? As long as they don't get in the way of WordPress's native capabilities. Okay, so native capabilities, what I mean is if you install WordPress on a web server, by the way, you don't install WordPress on your computer. It has to be installed in the cloud somewhere or on a web server with a hosting company. If you install WordPress and start publishing with it and don't do anything to the default design, it's going to be great for search engine results. There are ways that people can goof it up. So I don't mean to say that all WordPress websites are search engine friendly, but as long as the designers don't get crazy and break it, it will absolutely natively be highly digestible to Google. And also, WordPress has a low total cost of ownership. Now behind the all of this other bullet points on this are the reasons why we absolutely recommend WordPress. Are that it is an open source project. That means that the code that runs WordPress, the software you install on a web server or that your web developer installs on a web server, is free of charge. It is free to use, so hence freedom, right? It's developed in a communal way in the open source community by people who are passionate about using the product. They use the software, and so they write code to improve it all the time. They're working on it. They donate their best efforts. The community does that as a whole, and then we all benefit from it, right? So it does have a low total cost of ownership. The software itself is free. Paying professionals to build, design, and maintain your WordPress site has a cost to it. You pay the cost of hosting your website. So I don't mean to indicate that it's always the cheapest way to go, but it is the lowest total cost of ownership, in my opinion. Okay, especially if we're factoring in results at all. Okay, so it's not expensive to own, maintain, and operate a WordPress website, but if you compare the results that you can get if you do what I show you here, what we're talking about today, if you do these things, then it will absolutely pay for itself many, many, many times over. And simplicity is one of the other reasons why we like it. Now, WordPress has gotten much more sophisticated and complex over the years, as one would expect, right? With an actively developed project that involves lots of community members working to improve it all the time and give it new features. It's got a lot of bells and whistles now that it didn't have back when I started it. So when I started using it. So let me talk to you a little bit about how I found WordPress, how that began, and what happened. Okay, I've got a couple of stories that I want to share with you. One of the stories that I'm going to share with you today goes back to September 2006. I was in need of new business cards, and I don't know, I just don't like to do the same old stuff that everybody does. So I was Googling in September of 2006. I was Googling information about, I was just looking for business card ideas. I stumbled across a story, and somebody in Silicon Valley had gone to some kind of a meetup or local gathering, and there was somebody walking around with business cards that had 3 bullet points. And the bullet points were, step 1, go to google.com. Step 2, type in Matt, and it was M-A-T-T. Step 3, hit I'm feeling lucky. Well, I don't remember how long ago it was that I last saw the I'm feeling lucky button. I mean, most of us don't even go to google.com and type in searches anymore. We type them into the address bar of our browser or whatever. But do you remember the I'm feeling lucky button? If you don't, here's what it did. You would run a search, and instead of just hitting enter, or type in, hit enter, or click the go or OK or whatever that said, search now. I forget what the button said. Instead of just doing that, you could there was a button next to it that said I'm feeling lucky. And so the normal operation of Google is you type your search and it would show you a list of 10 results, right? The top 10 results with some ads, maybe later some map listings. By the way, 2006, we didn't have map listings yet. Google Maps were not a thing yet, at least not in search results. And so the I'm feeling lucky button, instead of showing a list of 10, it skipped showing you a list and it just opened the top result in your web browser. Okay, so think about this for a second. Think about what it would take to know so confidently that your website ranked number 1 in Google for your first name, Matt. Okay, it wasn't like an uncommon or weirdly spelled name. It's just Matt, M-A-T-T, right? So think about what it would take to be so confident that your website ranks number 1 in Google search for your first name, that you would print on business cards and hand them out at events. That set of steps. Go to Google, type in Matt, hit I'm feeling lucky. Well, that's what this person was, confident about what people would see if they did those things. Well, who was Matt and why do we care? Matt was the co-founder of WordPress. And there are some technical reasons why he ranked number 1 in Google on his first name that have to do with the WordPress project at the time. He had an incredibly large number of links on other people's websites that pointed to his website using his first name, M-A-T-T. Nevertheless, that caused me to go check out WordPress. What is this? That day, I opened a hosting account and I went through the famous 5-minute install, which took me a lot more than 5 minutes because it was the first time I'd done this. And I was new to the tools, and I'm a geek, so I wasn't completely foreign to the ideas involved, but I had to set up an FTP client, and I needed to create a MySQL database, and I needed to download PHP code to my computer, then upload it to a web server and run some commands and do things, and it was complicated. Okay, it was complicated. By the way, many hosting companies today, they'll either already have WordPress installed for you by the time you finish signing up, or you can hit one button and install WordPress once you do sign up. So it's a lot simpler to install today than it used to be. You can do it in a lot less than 5 minutes if you want to, but the famous 5-minute install still works. So in any case, I got a hosting account that day. I got a new domain name. I installed WordPress, and I published my very first blog post with it that very day. And I was in the middle of a project with a client at the time. We don't build a lot of websites. Okay, but at that time, I had this long-term client. He was a physician here in the area where I'm located in Florida. And he was a specialist. He was a neurologist, actually. And I'd been in a long-term business relationship with him and his medical practice. And so I happened to be in the middle of constructing a website for him. And because it was the famous 5-minute install, it didn't take me long to add WordPress to the whole mix. And he had an extra domain name, actually. So when we launched his new website on his main domain name, I told him that I'd learned about WordPress, and I told him what to do, and didn't charge him at all for this. Set up WordPress on his other domain name, and let him start using his new website. And his main website at that time was certainly not built in WordPress. In fact, it was several years before we started even dreaming of using WordPress to build a whole website. At that time, it was just a blog. So WordPress started as a blogging tool. It was used by all the major not all of them, but many major bloggers, especially independent bloggers at the time, were using WordPress. And so I forgot about him. I didn't forget about him, but I just wasn't working on his website project anymore, and wasn't in daily contact with him or even frequent contact with him. About a year later, he contacted me and said, "Hey, I want to go to lunch." And I promise you're going to love this story. It's an important story. Okay. We go to lunch, and we get our food, and we're talking. he starts to tell me a story. He said, I used to have the first 4 pages in Google, but, and he kept talking, and I'll just be honest, I trailed off in my brain at that point. Like, Charlie Brown's teacher was still, I didn't hear another thing he said for, I don't know, a little bit of time. And I kind of tuned back into the conversation, and I looked at him and I said, wait, can you back up? Did you say you had the top 4 pages in Google? And he says, oh yeah. You're telling me that if somebody ran, what search did they run? And so he told me, and he was a neurologist. So he said neurologist, and then he named our town where we live, where his medical practice is located. Neurologist, town. Okay, that was the search. Okay, yeah. Okay. And you're telling me that the first 40 results, because remember at that time, Google would show you 10 results on a page. The first 40 results were for you, your business? Yeah, that's what yeah. And I said, okay, all right. Okay. And I'm thinking, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, how is that even possible? 40, all 4 of the first 4 pages. Then he said, so I said, well, what is it you're upset about? Because he told me, I'm really mad about something. And what are you upset about? Well, he said, there's this other guy on page 3 now. And I was stupefied. I'm like, all right. First of all, that's not a problem. I mean, even then, most people didn't click through to the 3rd page of the Google search results. I mean, today, we joke. I mean, for a long time, the joke was the best place to bury a body was on the 2nd page of the Google results because nobody ever would see it. But now it's even at the bottom of the 1st page. You could. I mean, it's. Anyway, so I told him what he could do to fix it, and he did, and he got that guy booted off of page 3, and he was back to owning all 4 pages of the top 4. All of the top 40 Google search results, 2 domain names, and also it had transformed his business. I mean, he was a specialist. A neurologist normally gets patients because, like, if you go to see a neurologist, usually you go see your primary care provider. You have migraines, or you have a tremor, or maybe you're taking your parents. Somebody has dementia or Parkinson's or whatever. There's all these kinds of things, right? The primary care provider refers you to the neurologist. That's not what was happening. These were people contacting him, scheduling appointments, and coming to see him as a physician because they found him on the web. And he was way ahead of the game. And this was roughly, fall of 2007 when this happened. Now, it wasn't all that long later that Google introduced map listings. And so the location of the searcher when they ran the search became a lot more important, and they would have either a 7-pack or a 10-pack of map results at that time. And so it literally became impossible, even with 2 domain names, to have even all of page 1, much less all of the first 4 pages. So Google's algorithm changed in such a way that that's no longer feasible. But if you're like me, you're like, wait a minute, how did this happen? What was it that he did? Well, he did exactly what I told him to do with WordPress. He had published a new article. In his case, all he had to do was write about the ailments he was treating. So I mentioned a few of them: migraine headaches, different types of headaches, cluster headaches, different things, Parkinson's disease, tremor, Alzheimer's, things that you would see a neurologist for. He was writing about these. And mind you, he was writing, I don't know, many of these were 1,500, 2,000 word treatises on these subjects, right? So he was writing way more than I would have probably recommended that he write, but he did it. And his writing style, he'd been published in medical journals and things, so his writing style was very technical in nature. It wasn't really targeted towards the consumer at all. And so today, there would be a lot of things that I would advise him to do differently than he did. But you know what he did that most people don't do? Is he wrote and published. So, as I said earlier, it's table stakes. You have to publish original text content on the web on a regular basis. You need to use WordPress to do it. Those are the essential components of any inbound marketing strategy. You want to dominate search. You want to grow in search. Forget dominating. A lot of us are in fields that are competitive. There are other people competing with you for your future customers in Google search or in search visibility as a whole, right? To be competitive, much less win, but just to even be competitive, to enter the race, you must publish fresh, original, text-based content to your website on a regular basis, and you need to use WordPress to do it. Period, end of story. Okay? So if you don't have a WordPress website, you need to get one. Or, as I said earlier, you can usually add WordPress to your site and we can talk about technical details with questions and answers and whatnot. So I won't get into the technical nature of it, but you can add a blog to your site. I don't care if you call it a blog, call it news, call it updates, call it, if your name is Bob, or call it Bob's Corner. I don't care what you call it, but publish useful content that is intended to answer the questions that your future customers are asking search engines. Right from me to you, okay? Just like I'm looking into this camera lens right now and I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to a huge audience of people. I'm not talking to all y'all out there in YouTube land. I'm talking to you, the person responsible for growing your business, the person running your website, running your marketing. I'm talking to you. That is very important, because if you write in that fashion, you will tend to be more helpful. People will relate to your content more. But answer their questions. Don't make it sales content. Sure, after you've done a good job of serving them by answering their question. I mean, think about what you would do if you were in a retail situation, which you may not be in the retail business, but just picture yourself in the retail situation. Somebody comes up to you and they want to know, should I buy this bottle of water or that bottle of water? And they ask you about it, right? Are you going to immediately jump to closing the sale? Are you going to immediately use all the salesman's tricks in the book that, always be closing? No, you're going to answer their question. You're going to win their trust. You're going to show that you're knowledgeable and gain credibility by answering authoritatively, like you know the answer, or that you at least have expertise to share, right? And only when you've done those things would you then say, how's that sound? Would you like to buy one? Right? And so think about the content that you're going to publish on your website in that way. You're going to be helpful. You're going to be credible. You're going to be trustworthy. You're going to serve them. Remember, when you go to a website, you don't care who it is or what they say, unless they look like they're sketchy, right? Unless they seem sketchy. The one thing you care about is what's in it for me. When I go to a website, I care about what's in it for me, right? I'm here to get information. I want that information. Excuse me. If you have provided me good information and you turn out to be credible and I think you're trustworthy and all that other stuff, if you then say, hey, I've got more information where that came from, would you like to have some more? I'm going to be much more inclined to be open to that offer for more. If it's a downloadable thing and you need my email address, I'm much more inclined to give you my email address if in fact you've done a good job of answering my question and meeting my need and helping me, right? This is why I say it's so hard oftentimes for us to get out of our own little mindset as the business owner, the marketer, the website operator, whatever, the person on this side of it, and instead put ourselves in the mind of the person on the other end of that screen or the other end of the device where they're talking to it and asking it questions. But we've got to learn to do it. We've got to struggle with it until we get good at it. But again, all of those are about how to do this well. Doing it well is great. It'll get you better results than doing it poorly. But doing it poorly is what it takes to get started. Okay, and maybe you'll do it well when you start, but most of us do it poorly when we start. I want to strongly urge you that you can be visible in search. You got to use WordPress to do it. And I will tell one more story. And I think you're going to like this story. Okay, so it'll be quick. I want you to know about a client that we did a project for, and I'm making an adjustment here to something on my screen for just a second while I talk. But this is somebody that we did a project for, and we still are working on this. Okay, so I'm just redacting a little bit of information from this so that I can show it to you. Many times I tell stories like the one I just told you about the physician, right? And many times I tell that story, and when I tell that story, people say, "Yeah, that's a lot of work," and it is. It's a lot of work to create content, and so some years ago, we just had one too many requests from people to produce the content for them. What would it take for you to do that for me? Okay, fine. So we put a team of people together and we started producing content. By the way, I am not here to sell you content production. If you want help with it, fine. We can talk about that. My team would be delighted to help you with it, but just do it. Just get started. And so in this case, we had a client, and they are in the neighborhood, so to speak. They're kind of a regional business based in a neighboring city. Okay, so we began doing what I'm urging you to do, which is publish fresh new content, original content, text-based content on a regular basis on your website. In this case, 300 to 500 words each time we publish. We try to publish on the same day every week. Okay. The content is written, as I said earlier, it's useful to the visitor. It's useful to the future customer. It's not about serving the business. It's about serving the people that the business serves. When we got started, they were nowhere to be found. I don't even think they were on page 1 for a basic search like service name, like, type of business, city. We took over. They had previously had somebody writing a blog for them. We took over. We made some changes to the way it was structured, and we started publishing. Within 2 weeks, they were on page 1. This was back in 2012. Within 2 weeks, they were on page 1 of the Google search results for that type of search. But what happened next is that they began to get traffic on a wide variety of other searches that were not that search. And we talked about this at length in our last session. The kinds of things someone searches for when they have a problem, and you happen to provide the answer, if you have correctly created content that's designed to be relevant for them running the search on their problem, then you'll get traffic. Here's what happened. The first full year that we created content for them, if you look at the 12-month period that begins the date that we started publishing, their website traffic for this regional, but nevertheless local business was 27,000 visitors versus 10,500 visitors. All right, so 160% increase, 170%, 160% increase, something like that. 156. Look at that. I have the calculation there. I forgot about that. Sorry. So in 2019, so if we just looked at the calendar year, there are all sorts of things happened in between here, but we've never stopped publishing fresh new content on a weekly basis, 300 to 500 words or more sometimes. But again, it's not about quantity as much as it is the quality and the utility and the relevance of the content that you create. In 2019, that number was 121,000 website visitors. And the year prior, 2018, that was only 62,000. It was a 96% increase. In other words, we were still getting these kind of doubling gains. If we looked at calendar 2019, which is when I put this slide together. So, I could update it. But and by the way, these were not all website visitors. So this company now is doing a lot of offline advertising and things, and they promote their domain name in radio commercials and television spots and offline and print and other things. I'm only showing you the visitors that came from Google and Bing. I'm not even showing you all that other traffic. We're just looking at the people that came from Google search, right? So, I mean, it's a staggering increase. These are free, non-paid. In other words, yeah, you can pay for traffic from Google and Bing. These are non-paid visitors, and so, oh, forgive me. I'm. I guess I need to remember how I created the slide. So, the year one in the 2019 numbers that I showed you first here did include all the traffic. Just the organic search component. Okay, so think about that. So if we look at 2019, January to December of 2019, 101,000 versus 47,000 the year prior. So that 101,000 out of 121,000, right? So 5 out of every 6 visitors to their website was coming from non-paid organic search traffic. 5 out of every 6. Just to do the math real quickly on that, right? And yeah, they paid us to create content. So this isn't free in the sense that it didn't cost anything. It won't be free when you do it either. It's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you energy. It's going to cost you attention, effort. Yes, you can outsource it. You can pay people who do this well to create useful, relevant, helpful content that serves the needs of your future customers well. Yes, you can pay people to do it. If you're in a situation where you have more time on your hands than you have budget to spend, you can do this yourself, much like Marcus Sheridan did in the story that I told earlier. He wrote the foreword to Jay Baer's book Utility. So no matter how much money you have to invest, you can literally get, I mean, I would recommend you go higher quality than this, but you can pay, if you wish, you can pay $5 a month for a hosting account and do a one-click install of WordPress and start typing and publishing today with a new domain name even. You can use a subdomain. So if you're like, in our case, we have growthedream.com. Growthedream.com is built on WordPress, so we don't need something different. But if it weren't built on WordPress and we said, well, I'm not ready to create a new website and I just want to add a blog, then you can use a subdomain. So blog.growthedream.com, for example, might be one way to do that. You can even, depending on your hosting situation, you might be able to put it in a subfolder. So like growthedream.com/blog, WordPress might be able to, there's lots of ways to do it. Okay, so please don't get hung up on which way is the best way. The best way is to start and to do it. So whether you get a new domain name and it serves as your blog, or whether you use a subdomain, I'd probably prefer, if given the choice, if you can do it, just get the subdomain set up for your existing domain and start publishing on your WordPress site there. Make that list of questions that we talked about earlier, 100 questions if you can get there. All the things people ask you. Write an intelligent, helpful, useful, meaningful, valuable article about each one of those questions. Publish each one as a separate post. The title of the blog post is going to be the exact phrased question that someone asks. How do I grow my business in 2021 without a huge budget? You know, that if someone is asking me that question, I'm writing a blog post with that title. How do I grow my business? Or maybe I might rephrase it. How to grow your business in 2021 without a huge budget. And then I might write that article that says step 1, get a WordPress site. Step 2, write a list of these questions. Step 3, publish a new article on each one, right? So phrase your answer, your response in the form of a helpful version of the question that someone might ask, right? If they're asking Google, how do I do this? Then you write, here's how you do this. You know, how to do this for your situation, whatever. Use the word you. And then write a response, a full article. Several paragraphs. You don't need to be concerned about making it incredibly long, 300 to 500 words. There's a little counter in WordPress that'll count your words for you. Make it 300 to 500 words, you know, if you can. Go longer if creating a valuable answer requires more words, right? But your goal here is not to make it lengthy. Your goal is to make it relevant, valuable, and useful. Okay, this was a dive into tactics to some degree, but I think you can see how it strategically ties in to growing your business. I hope you found it useful. If you have questions about what we talked about today, shoot us an email, hello@growthedream.com. I'm not sure that we've been able to staff the Q&A during the live stream today. I haven't been watching. I've got that screen up. Oh, that's what I look at over there. There's a screen over there with that on it. I haven't been paying attention to it, so I'm not sure if we've done that today. But shoot us an email, hello@growthedream.com. Visit growthedream.com/strategy stream. We'll be updating that with links to the videos that we've put out so far. And I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving if you're here in the United States where we are. Tomorrow's a big holiday. Obviously, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday, all that stuff coming up. So there's a lot going on for businesses. And I appreciate you being here today. I hope you found it valuable. And we'll look forward to seeing you on future events. Thanks again.